I'm a receptionist for a professional office building in Pasadena, California. A female in my mid-20s who spends a long, boring days at my desk listening to my favorite murder, crime junkies, and my new obsession, Let's Not Meet, the pod that I started binging yesterday and got me writing this post. So it was a normal Tuesday at the office. I get off around 6 p.m. and lock everything up. I make my way down the stairs to the lit parking lot and say goodnight to the standing security guard. I pull out my keys in preparation for the long walk to my car, which is located in the employee parking lot. You see, the employee parking lot is a block away from my office building on a secluded street with literally no streetlights or through traffic. I'm not sure why this street has 0 streetlights, but it does. Normally it's not too dark out by 6 p.m., but since it's November, it's pitch black by this time. So as a routine, I always pull out my keys while I'm in the lit up parking lot and call my boyfriend just in case I get murdered or something. This situation made me realize that my boyfriend cannot help me through the phone. So I'm talking to my boyfriend, keys in hand, and I see a tall dark figure on the sidewalk that I'm walking on to get to my car. I say something to my boyfriend and I see the dark figure walking towards me, and so I flip on my phone light and shine it in his face, and he says, "Who the fuck you talking to, bitch?" I immediately go off the sidewalk and into the street to get away and say, "My boyfriend?" I could tell right away that he was a dirty meth head homeless man with a huge beard, khaki shorts, and ball cap. He then starts yelling at me, "Who you talking to, bitch?" louder, and follows me in the street. I literally stop and show him my phone like an idiot, trying to prove that I wasn't talking to him. He then comes up to me at arm's distance and starts calling me awful names and demanding I go to the other side of the street as if he owned the place. We are now both in the middle of the street. I knew if I crossed to the other side, I would just have to cross again as my car was on the side of the crazy homeless man. I told him to get the fuck away from me. "I'll call the police right now," with the most disgusted look on my face. I'm not a bitch to be messed with. He then puts his hand in the shape of a gun, puts his fingers up to my head, and then a meth head induced slur says, "I'll kill you, bitch. Right here, you fat cunt. I'll kill you." My heart sank. At that moment, I realized this guy was out of his mind, angry and violent. I start to rush towards my car, all while my boyfriend's on the phone saying, "What's going on? Get in your car. Put your keys between your fingers and run." I see the man run towards my car, and luckily, I dodged him, pressed the unlock button, and got in super quick. He's now standing right in front of my car and proceeds to kick my front bumper hard, saying, "Fuck you. You better not call the cops," repeatedly. He then runs behind the dumpster and is like spying on me behind the dumpster as I'm pulling out. He then starts running around my car towards the front, and I truly thought that I would have to run him over. He starts chasing my car down the road and he stops at his belongings. I peel into my office building and flag down the security guard hysterically. I told him there's a crazy man that just threatened to kill me. I called the cops and see the man booking it down the street, which gave me the perfect view of his face and outfit. The cops sent officers out and I left the scene 5 minutes later. The crazy man was still in the corner just standing there when I was leaving, so I screamed, "Fuck you," as I drove off. He tried to run after my car. Apparently the cops couldn't find them, even sent the helicopter. I later found out that he tried to rob my coworker this night but was unsuccessful. The next morning, I saw the crazy man back in front of the employee parking lot, but 2 cops were surrounding him. He finally got arrested. I was happy and anxious that I had to see this crazy man yet again. He proceeded to hang around that street for the next 2 weeks. I constantly saw him in the morning, and on my lunch, I was so paranoid that he was looking for me. I thought that's why he kept coming back. He must be looking for me. I messaged our office building manager and they got a trespassing order on the dude. From then, I hadn't seen him again until this Monday. He was sleeping at the exact same spot where I encountered him. My heart sinks every time I see him and I relive my trauma all over. Our office building now has employees move cars over from the employee parking lot to the main one around 4, so no one is walking in the dark anymore. And we use the buddy system now. I carry 2 pepper sprays that I don't go anywhere without now. I always thought that my obsession with true crime had prepped me for any scary situation thrown my way. After this night, I realized that no amount of true crime pods could have ever prepared me to fight off someone who has a will to harm me. If this man had a real gun, I'd for sure be done for. I work at a McDonald's in my hometown, and we often get a lot of strange, creepy people in my drive-thrus. A few weeks ago when I was taking orders, we had a man come through and order a large amount of food. When we get a large order, we generally have the people pull into another section of the parking lot to wait so we don't mess up our times. The man's voice alone put me on edge. I am someone who has severe anxiety, so I don't go anywhere alone, and I am very wary of men in general due to some past trauma. As soon as this man ordered, he asked for my name, which we are supposed to give so we can get reviewed on customer surveys. So I told him my name, and then he asked me for my age. I told him I wasn't willing to give him that information. He whined.
"Why not?"
Something about him set off warning bells in my head, but at that point, I hadn't seen what he looked like. I just heard his voice. As a junior in high school and a female, I was no stranger to having to be careful. I was incredibly uneasy, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, but I brushed it off because I thought I was being paranoid again. Someone came onto the floor for their shift, so they took my spot and I went to the back to see what my manager wanted me to do next, and she asked me to run out the held orders. I agreed, trying to shake off my dread. She handed me a bag and asked me to run it out to the man in spot 1. I took it outside, and as I got to the entrance, I saw him. He was getting out of his truck, muttering to himself. As soon as I heard his voice, I went entirely stiff and I went back inside the store. I went and found my male manager and explained to him that this man had made me incredibly uncomfortable and I was not willing to risk bringing him his food. My manager understood and took this man his food. The next thing I knew, my manager was running back to the store with this man on his heels, shirtless and barefoot, screaming and muttering nonsense. My manager slammed the door shut and barred it. They waited until the man left and continued on as if nothing had happened. They didn't call the police and I was too scared to say a word. My manager took me into the back of the store and explained to me that when he got outside, the man was waiting for me in the bed of his pickup truck, holding a flower, barefoot and shirtless. He became angry when my manager reached him, asking for me by name and demanding to know where I was because he had a flower for me. When he explained that I was busy, the man jumped up and began to chase my manager, who ran to the store for cover. The man banged on the doors for a few seconds before driving away. I called my mom, crying, and she took me home. When we arrived, I told her what happened and my dad found out. He drove me to the police station. They were very condescending and unhelpful, even acting annoyed when I explained the situation. Eventually, another officer came in and listened to me. He calmly explained that there was nothing that they could do because the store had not reported it. They even tried reviewing security footage, but they couldn't make out the numbers. They suspected if I had gone over there, he would have grabbed me. They told me about the number of registered sex offenders in my small town and the amount of sex trafficking going on, and I was shocked. He could have easily been one of them. I am now overly cautious and scared to death of everything. I look at the list of registered sex offenders and pedophiles in my town and scrutinize them, constantly looking around me for them, afraid I see them everywhere. I guess the moral of the story is, if you are uncomfortable, listen to your instincts. If you feel as though you are in danger, call the police. I wish I did. They might have caught him, but no one knows who he is, and I am terrified of finding him again. It terrifies me even more to think what could have happened to me had I not asked my manager to take out the order instead. I could have gotten raped, kidnapped, assaulted, or murdered. I don't think I will ever be able to forget this experience, and I will most likely be afraid of social situations for a long time. I'm a French student doing my master's in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I live alone in an apartment in a building where there are only students. I'm 22 and enjoying life peacefully. To give you a bit of context, I live in a calm, good neighborhood. The only noises I'd hear are the tram or parties in the building since a lot of students are there. One night around 10 p.m., I hear a knock on my door. I live on the 3rd floor, and to get to my front door, you have to open the main door, which needs a key. Then you need to open the door to my corridor with the same key. So people who want to come to my door must have the key, call me, or ring at the door so I could open the doors for them from my apartment. Nothing of this happened. I just hear a knock on my door. I usually open the door without a second thought, whether it's my landlord or a neighbor asking for something. As I told you, I feel pretty safe in the building and I could also take care and defend myself in case anything happened. But this time, for some reason, I had a bad feeling about this. I didn't move at first. I thought the person would just leave. However, the knocking continued for 30 seconds. I said, "Yeah," in English. The person knocking doesn't say anything. I say in English again, "Who is it?" The voice answers in English. "It's Uber Eats," which is weird because people here always speak in Dutch and I recognize the voices and accents of everyone on my floor who have the key to access the floor. So, that means it wasn't a neighbor, it wasn't my landlord, it was somebody claiming to come from Uber Eats. But the issue is I didn't order anything from Uber Eats that day. The voice was also unfamiliar. In case it's a prank or a neighbor pulling a joke, it was also a deep voice, at least 40 and probably a smoker. I replied that, "I didn't order anything, you must have it wrong." And after a few seconds, the knocking continues and the same voice says, "I'm pretty sure you did. I have an order under your name." I started panicking. I look around and pick up a knife in case he breaks the door because the knocking was getting a bit louder. I checked if my door is locked. It wasn't. I was literally 10 centimeters away from him. My front door was the only thing keeping him from me, and I'm glad it doesn't open from the outside. You need a key to open it, even if it's not locked. I step back and I ask again, "What's the name?" He seems to be thinking for a few seconds. Then a final knock occurs. It was loud, and it translated to some anger or frustration. Finally, I hear him going down the emergency stairs right next to my apartment. The steps were heavy, and the person was clearly in a hurry. I don't know what he wanted, or what would have happened to me if I had opened the door, as I usually do. I still haven't understood how he got through the 2 doors, and why did he come specifically to the last apartment on the 3rd floor. Did he try that with others? I posted a post about it on my WhatsApp group we have in the building. No one saw anything suspicious. No one opened the door for anyone. Anyway, I'm just lucky for my instinct telling me not to open that door, and I'm glad I listened. I went to college in a historic mid-sized city in Florida, and at the time lived in a duplex downtown, maybe 3 blocks from campus. The city is known to be pretty safe, and I live in a pretty decent area with large, historic homes near me. The story takes place around 3 years ago. A little backstory that will become relevant. The duplex I lived in had a front door that locked, and then both the upstairs and downstairs units had their own locking door. I lived downstairs and had 2 roommates. But this specific night, only one of my roommates was home. We knew the girls that lived upstairs, but only really spoke to them in passing. When they moved in, we emphasized how important it was to us for them to keep the main front door locked, and they did a pretty good job of doing so. So me and my roommate are in for the night, knowing the front door is locked, and smoke a few joints. At some point, we hear a knock at the front door and quickly realize the girls upstairs had ordered a pizza. Later on, it becomes evident that they never locked the front door after receiving their pizza. So we finally go to sleep in our own rooms, and since I had a queen bed, I would often sleep with my phone and laptop next to me in my bed. A couple hours after I fell asleep, I woke up to a man standing over my bed. As soon as I realize I'm not dreaming, I notice that he's quickly moving my phone and computer off my bed and moving my comforter, trying to get into my bed. I start to ask him who he is, what's he doing here, and just generally confused, as I was still slightly high from before I went to sleep. The only thing he said to me multiple times was that he was just trying to get in bed. At this point, I begin to panic as my mind obviously goes to the worst. I was hoping that maybe my roommate had invited some random Tinder guy over and that he had gone to the wrong room, but the more I questioned him, all he had to say was, "I'm just trying to get in bed." I owned pepper spray and a stun gun, but I had accidentally left them on a shelf that the guy was standing in front of, so there was no way I would be able to grab them without escalating the situation. Realizing that I needed to do something quickly, I blurted out, "There are 5 people who live in this house, and if you don't get the fuck out now, I will scream and they will be here within seconds." Luckily, that was all it took to scare him off. I don't know if he had brought something with him or if he stole something from me, but I saw him grab something in the dark and run out of my room. As soon as he left my room, I shut the door and locked it and tried to find my phone. I couldn't find it anywhere, but then quickly realized that between my room and the front door is the room of my friend that was home. As scared as I was terrified that the guy had maybe gone into her room, so I grabbed my stun gun and a pocket knife, counted to 3, and ripped open my door. I ran into my roommate's room, and she was fast asleep. There was no evidence of the guy either. I told her what happened, and she asked me if I was sure I wasn't dreaming. I began to question myself until I walked out of her room and saw that our front door was wide open. I went to my room to search for my phone, and I finally found it hidden under a pile of clothes across the room from where I had left it. That sent a chill up my spine, as I immediately knew for a fact someone had been in my house and room while I was sleeping, and long enough to hide my phone, which only worsened my suspicion of his attentions. I ran back to my roommate's room, who at that point believed me, barricaded ourselves into the room, and called 911. Within minutes, there were police cars swarming our street and yard, and they yelled for us to quickly leave the residence and run towards them. At least a dozen police officers came running in and searched every inch of our apartment, and woke up the girls upstairs and searched their apartment to ensure the man had left. The officers then had write me a statement, and I gave them a description of the man, and to this day, I've never heard a single thing about the case. I feel incredibly lucky with the outcome of the situation, but the thought of his intentions still terrifies me. And additionally, the fact that he was never caught scares me, as I would hate for anyone to have to go through the pure fear that I did. I will add, there is a chance that he was on drugs or mentally ill and had no bad intentions. However, because he was never caught, I would never know, and my mind will always assume the worst to the man who now keeps me up at night. Let's not meet.